Hello everyone, it's Rafael Gutierrez. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm again doing it live, mostly because I'm trying to get all the bugs out when I do the lectures live, I can actually get things perfect. I do tend to look at the sound. I'm trying to see if I do need a microphone or not. Sometimes it seems like with YouTube I don't, so that's one of the reasons why I am trying to do live stuff. Now, besides that, there's actually a lot of other things that I've wanted to come across and talk about. And I'm going to rotate this a little more this way, so you don't get to see the dirtiness of my kitchen. But one of the things there's two things I'm going to talk about today, and one of them is the difference between opinion and facts in martial arts. A lot of times people forget this. A lot of times people think opinions are facts. And the truth is there's a big difference with them. And the reason I'm actually talking about this now is I was watching a video of someone who is really respected in martial arts, but they went beyond their level of expertise. And it's really easy to do. Now, everyone in martial arts has different levels of expertise of different things. For instance, there are people who are great at functional techniques. There are some people who are great at tournaments. There are some people who are not great at joining people together. And there are some people who have stuff that is a little harder to put into place. For me, one of the things that I can do is I was trained in medicine. I actually do have an MD, and I started teaching anatomy, physiology, microbiology in colleges and universities. And I ended up seeing certain things from my profession which I could bring into martial arts. And one of the things that was important for teaching anatomy, clinical anatomy especially, is we had to look at clinical data before we said anything. So sometimes people would say, oh, well, this fracture happens this way. And when we look at the clinical data, it didn't happen like that. One of the funny parts about that is how people break hips. It used to be, well, people would get avascular necrosis because they'd break their hip. Usually older because they had osteoporosis. Well, now we're actually seeing other things. We're seeing avascular necrosis of the hip in relatively young athletic individuals, a lot of times involved with martial arts. Well, when we actually look at certain things, we can see that there are certain movements that people do that can destroy their hips. Hands are the same thing. Now, recently I saw a video where someone was talking about the best way to punch. And they really were talking about opinions. It doesn't really matter how you punch as long as you punch. And that's an opinion. It's not based on facts. Now, the facts would actually look at fracture rates, structure, look at every detail of the hand to see if there's one way to do it versus the other. Interestingly, there was an article in an anatomy journal where someone actually wrote how the hand was made to be used to punch. And if you lined it up perfectly, you would have this massive weapon. And the way they actually lined it up with these two knuckles. Now, I don't feel the hand was made to punch. I feel that it is something we have. And so we tend to try to learn to use it so we can use it as a weapon. Now, why I did write an article in Masters Magazine, which I'll actually put a link on comments if anyone's interested, but you have to ask. Where I talk about why you want to use these two instead of these three. I look at those pretty much those two different varieties. And one of the things that I actually did is I went to the clinical data to find out which was a better way. What I determined was better was whatever caused less injury to whoever was punching. And so with that, I was able to say, this is a better way, especially if you're hitting the head. But there are certain areas where if you're using these three to punch, it won't matter because it's soft enough that it's not going to cause fractures of the bones or dislocations. And so, one thing I found is some styles use these three while they never use a clenched fist to punch the hand. They use open hand. And that leads to that one opinion where you should never punch a head. Well, if you're punching with these two, you can do a lot of damage. And if you know which areas to avoid, you can even keep yourself safer. A lot of problems is people just think, well, just punch randomly and whatever you hit, you hit. It tends not to be necessarily the best way to do it. And so that's actually one of the big things that I actually wanted to talk about is just how the different fists will are used different ways, and there are differences between facts and opinions. And as martial artists, if we are going to let our art survive to the next level, to the next century, I would say, we really need to start looking at what the facts are. We really can't look at, well, we just want to believe this, so we're going to. Things have to be a certain way. We have to look at what is actually happening, not just say, well, hey, we'll see what's going on. We'll see what I like, and if I like it, great. If I don't, no, you shouldn't do that. If we don't do that, traditional martial arts in particular are going to fade away because they're going to go towards the straight sport direction because they're not offering anything that you can't get from any other area. What I mean by that is this: if we're saying, okay, martial arts is good for self-defense, but we're not using the science of how things actually are, we can end up breaking a lot, doing a lot of damage to us. And there's a lot of other martial arts that are coming out now, which they will be doing this. They will be looking at data and seeing what works and what doesn't. And that will make us they'll make it so we actually fall behind. Now, the other thing I was going to talk about is, actually, before I forget, again, at the end of, probably at the beginning of January, I'm going to do another lecture. This time I'm going to actually talk about cartilage and different things that we can do to help prevent injuries, as well as different things people do that cause injuries. If you looked at the skin one, you notice how, well, nobody watched that one until later on, which is fine as long as people watch it. But if you want to ask live questions, I will announce next week the time and day I'm going to do it. It will probably be a Saturday, and it will be I will mention the time Pacific Standard Time. Now, there is another thing I did want to talk about besides the fact versus opinion, and that's something that I found really interesting. I was watching a movie with my girlfriend, and one of the characters was, I know, get my facts from movies, right? One of the characters pretty much judged another character based on the opinion that they had. Oh, they said something like, your life is easy, you have all the money, you have all this, your life is a dream. And the person responds, well, no, getting divorced, don't know if I'm going to see my kids, I'm living in a studio that I use for work, and no, life isn't really as happy as a person thought it was. And it actually got me to think about some other things. And one of the things that karate actually offers that people forget. A lot of times, as you walk around, you have people who are envious, thinking someone else's life is so much easier than theirs. It's so much better. Now, there are people's lives who are better. And one of the things I've noticed is most of the people whose lives I think, well, this would be a great life to have, they're doing great. They worked for it. They worked hard for it. I sometimes mention my little brother. He's only 4 years younger than me, but he's actually worked really hard his whole life to get everything he wanted. He works, major. He came down to San Diego one time, and half the time he was here, he was working on projects from home. I actually mentioned on my Off the Rails how my dad used to work from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. When he was starting out. But people don't see that. What they see is they see the end result. Unless you're in martial arts. If you think about it, you have two students who come into martial arts. One of them may actually be better at martial arts than the other. But the thing that ends up happening is that student who is better, if he's not practicing, if he's not training himself, if he's not pushing himself, he will be left behind by someone who may not have the natural skills that another one had, but he's willing to put the time into it. Martial arts shows you that if you want to get ahead in martial arts, in particular, you have to push yourself. You can't just say, well, I'm happy where I'm at, and that's it. You're not going to move up. I mean, if you're happy being a green belt your whole life, well, that's great. But if you want to actually go from white to green, green to brown, brown to black, you have to make the effort. And when you see that in martial arts, you start seeing it in other aspects of your life. Yes, not everything's going to be perfect. I'm an adjunct professor, and not everything works out the way I would like. As time goes on, I'm going to mention more and more about problems with education. which are the same problems that you actually see in martial arts. Uh, but that's one of the nice things that martial arts gives you, is it gives you that reality of people don't just magically get to a place. Nobody just reads a scroll and wow, they have all the knowledge of the world. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes patience. And once you actually get there, people can look at you and think, wow, you really have natural talent. And what's funny is many of people who you do see as that people do see as having a natural talent, if you talk to people who know them well, they'll find out no, they didn't have a natural talent. They pushed themselves, and that's actually one of the nice things with martial arts is it does give you that view. Now, again, in one of the first weekends of April, I am going to make the video on cartilage and how to protect it, how what we do to damage it. You will be able to ask 5 questions, and if you like the channel and you want to support it, please consider going on Amazon, buying one of the 2 books. I hope you enjoy this and have a nice day.